This conference will now be recorded.
So in the last class, we started with exception handling. The main need of going with exception handling is to manage the runtime errors. So when we run the program during runtime, if you are getting any errors, we call them as exceptions. And once the exception occurs, the application will get terminated. So to avoid this abnormal termination only, we go with exception handling. And how to handle? Just we make use of try and catch block. And we have seen the exception hierarchy there. Today we'll be going with the topics like we'll discuss more on this runtime exceptions. Then we go with try with multiple catch block, finally block, and user defined exceptions. So let us initially go with runtime exceptions. So what are runtime exceptions? The exceptions which occur during program execution are runtime exceptions. The exceptions which occur during program execution are what? Runtime exceptions. And very important statement, all runtime exceptions are subclasses of runtime exception class. If you are getting a runtime exception means it is a subclass of which class? Runtime exception class. Simple blind rule we have to remember. And all runtime exceptions are categorized as unchecked exceptions. So if you are getting a random exception means they are categorized as what? Unchecked exceptions. These are simple blind rules we should remember. Now, let us understand the random exceptions using a program when which exception is going to occur. Random exception demo. Open Eclipse. We have created a package exceptions. Right click on exceptions package and say new class. Random exception demo with main method. Now, let us initially see about arithmetic exception. So when we get arithmetic exception, already we know when you divide any number by 0, we get what? Arithmetic exception. See when we run, it's saying exception in thread main java.lan.arithmetic exception. Arithmetic exception and the message is divide by 0. Now my objective is in this program, I want to just elaborate when these exceptions are going to occur, not how to handle. So in order to handle what we need to do, just we need to keep the code in try and catch block. But my objective is just I want to elaborate when which exception is going to occur. I don't want to handle. So if I want to show the next exception, keep this code in comments. Now the next one, array index out of bounds exception. So if you take an array with some values like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and if you are printing n of 2 index. So what is the value at n of 2? Index 30. If you are writing something like n of 9 index, 9 is what? Out of index here. 9 is what here? Out of index. So if you are trying to access an array which is out of index, then we get what? Array index out of bound exception. So when you divide any number by 0, we get what exception? Arithmetic exception. If you are trying to access an array out of index, we get what? Array index out of bounds exception. So when we run, we get array index out of bounds exception. The next exception is string index out of bounds exception. If you are taking a string like s equal to welcome, I'm taking a string s equal to welcome. Now if you are accessing a character like a start character at one index. So what is the character at one index? E. If you are trying, so it is out of bound index, and since it is related to string, we get string index out of bounds exception. We cannot access a character out of string index here. Next one, simple, a negative array size exception. If you take an array, and when we are giving the size of an array with a negative value, when the size of the array is a negative value, then we get negative array size exception. Next one, important, number format exception. Number format exception. If you take a string str equal to something like abc, I'm having a string str equal to what? Abc. Now we want to convert into primitive integer. How to convert? Using wrapper class integer dot parse int, and if you pass str, since str contains a value abc, we cannot convert into number type. So if your string contains alphabets or alphanumerics, we cannot convert into number types. Then in that situation, we get what exception? Number format exception. Now if you take a string, next one, null pointer exception. If you take a string str equal to null, so this is not only for string, any object you take, and if you are pointing to null, now by using this object, if you try to access any members of the class, if you try to access any members of class, since this str is pointing to null, and if you are accessing the members of class, then we get null pointer exception. Clear all of you these exceptions? Now let me document all these words. So when we get arithmetic exception, trying to divide a number by 0, array index out of bounds exception, trying to access a character of a string, so trying to access an array element which is out of index. String index out of bounds exception, trying to access a character of a string which is out of index. Negative array size exception. When the given array size is negative. Number format exception. Number format exception. Trying to convert a string into number type which is not possible. This is what not possible. Null pointer exception. null pointer exception, trying to access the members of a class when the object of the class is pointing to null. Right? So recap all this. Any questions anyone up to here? No. The next concept over here is try with multiple catch blocks. Now, let me elaborate this with the syntax. Here we go with a try block. In try block, we go with some set of statements. Now, if you are getting an exception in try block, it will go to catch block and we'll say here exception. Since exception is the superclass of all other classes, we can handle all types of exception. Since exception is what? Since exception is superclass of all other exceptions, we can handle all types of exceptions. We can handle what? All types of exceptions here. Now, in this try block, there is a chance of getting multiple exceptions. Yeah. Hello, Chirag. Any question? Now, in this try block, there is a chance of getting multiple exceptions. So based on the exception type, we want to handle. So if it is based on exception type 1, we want to handle based on type 1. Catch exception type 2. We want to handle based on type 2. Like that. Catch exception type n. We want to handle based on type n. So we can understand more once we write the code of this. Concept is very simple finally. So what is the use of try with multiple catch blocks? It is used to provide proper message to the user based on the exception type. So when we want to provide proper message to the user based on the exception type, we go with this multiple catch blocks. We'll understand more using the program. Once we see the code, concept of multiple catch block is simple. Yeah, yes, Chirag, any question? Hello, Chirag, I'm unable to hear you. I can send a message. I click on exceptions package and send new class multiple catch. Okay. So null pointer exception. See, null pointer exception is like if you are having a object but pointing to null. You are having what? An object which is pointing to null. And by using this object, if you access any members of the class, we get what? Null pointer exception. Okay. Now, a simple case, if you take a simple case, you are trying to get a database connection. You are trying to get what? A database connection. Now, Due to some reasons, due to some mistake in your program, we are unable to get the database connection. So if you are unable to get the database connection, what will be the value of con will be null here. Con will be what here? Null. Because due to some reasons, we are unable to get the database connection. Now, by using this con, if you try to access any methods here, if you try to call any method, it will go with what? Null pointer exception. It will go with null pointer exception. This is one of the scenario. So if you are getting null pointer exception, then you have to identify that there is some mistake in my database connection. Because of that, I'm getting null pointer exception. Then we go to this code and we try to rectify that. Clear? A scenario where we get null pointer exception, all of you? Chirag? No. Coming to this multiple catch block. Here we go with a try block. Here we go with a try block. Then in this try block, we'll write the code like this. Int n1 equal to integer dot parseInt args of 0. Int nt equal to integer dot parseInt args of 1. So we are reading two command line arguments here. We are reading two command line arguments. Then we'll say int result equal to n1 by n2. We are dividing first number with second number and we'll display the value of result. Now, in this try block, which exceptions may occur? In this try block, which exceptions may occur? One is arithmetic exception. When we give second number as 0, so divide by 0 will go with arithmetic exception. Then we get one more exception, array index out of bound exception. Why we get array index out of bound exception? Here we are reading two command line arguments. But when during runtime, if I provide only one argument or no argument, but you are trying to access the index value, we get array index out of bound exception. And one more is parsing. So when you are doing parsing, if I give the argument as some XX, but you are trying to convert into number type, then we get number format exception. So simple. Slash means arithmetic exception. If you are using arrays means array index out of bound exception. Parsing means number format exception. That's the way to identify. Now based on exception type, I want to provide a message. So if it is generating arithmetic exception, then we'll provide the message to the user. Divide by 0, not allowed. If it is going with array index out of bounds exception, then we'll provide the message require two numbers. If it is generating number format exception, then we'll go with the message enter only numbers. Now, can we guarantee that we get only these three exceptions? No guarantee. No guarantee. So it may be any runtime exception. So we'll write here one more catch block, runtime exception. We'll go with the message runtime exception occurred. So it can be any type of exception. Any type of exception can be handled by exception class. Exception occurred like this. The last two catch blocks are suggestion only. The last two catch blocks are suggestion here. Now, when you run the program, how to run the program? When you are having command line arguments, we have to right click on your program and say run as, run configurations. Choose the class which you want to run. search, choose the class here. What is that? Multiple catch demo. Then come to arguments tab and provide the arguments. If you say 10 and 5, and when you click on run, we get result as 2. Now if you run the code again, come to arguments, and if I pass 10 and 0, then divide by 0 is arithmetic exception. Then see the message what we can see. It will go to arithmetic exception. So it's displaying message divided by 0, not allowed. If you run the code again, if you provide only one argument or no argument, and if you are trying to read that argument value, then we get array index out of bound exception. Then see it is going with what message? Require 2 numbers. If you run the code, and if I go with some argument like from pp, then I cannot convert pp into number type. Then we get number format exception. Then it displays the message enter only numbers. Clear this concept, all of you? Now, here we are having one important syntax rule. If you make first catch block as exception and the last catch block as arithmetic exception, now see we are getting error because all these classes are subclass of which class? Exception class. And exception can handle all types of exceptions. Since exception is superclass, it can handle all types of exceptions. When you write first catch block as exception, then no meaning of writing this remaining catch blocks. So the syntax rule is when you go with the try with multiple catch block, the order of catch block cannot be from superclass to subclass. It cannot be from superclass to subclass. So what is the syntax rule here? In try with multiple catch blocks, the order of catch blocks cannot be from superclass to subclass. Clear? Any questions anyone up to here? No. Finally block. Finally block. Very simple. Finally block is executed irrespective of exception present in try block. Irrespective means even there is an exception or no exception, finally block will get executed. The syntax is we go with the try block, we go with some set of statements, then catch block, exception, then we handle the exception in catch block, then we go with finally block. Here mainly we do closing or cleanup operations. Closing or cleanup operations. Now, in try block, if you get exception, it will go to catch block and even goes to finally. In try block, no exception. If no exception, it won't go to catch, but it will go to finally. So finally will get executed even there is exception or no exception. Then, where we use this finally block is like, if you go with the example, if you are having try block and you are going with a database connection, you are connecting to a database. After getting connection to database, we do some transactions like some transaction 1, transaction 2. We do some transactions on the database. Like that, we do some transactions on database. Then once all transactions are complete, we do the closing operation. It's a cleanup operation. Then if you are getting any exception, we'll go to catch block and we handle the exception. Now in transaction 2, we got an exception. Let us suppose in transaction 2, we got exception. So once you get exception, what will happen? The control will jump to catch block and handles the exception and goes down. Will it come to remaining part of try block here? No. So if you are getting exception in try block, the control will jump to catch block, handles the exception and continues down. But it won't come back to try block again. Means, will this closing operation happens now? No. Now the point is, even exception occurs or does not occur, I want to do the closing operation. Then where we have to keep this code? We keep this closing operation in finally block. We keep the closing operation where in finally block. Now, even exception occurs or does not occur, this code will get executed compulsory. So this is the place where we use finally. And when I discuss the topic JDBC, then we'll see this example completely practically. Okay. Now, before we go to the next topic, user-defined exceptions, let us understand one important method here, that is toString method. And we keep on using this method, toString method. Somewhat confusion method for today, but as we keep on repeating this concept of toString will be simple finally. Will we keep on using till end of our codes this method? That much important it is, but simple finally. Now, let us understand this method using the program toString build. Right click on exceptions package and say new class toString. Now, in this, let us take a class like book. Any class you can take. We are taking a class book with book ID, book name, and price. Now, give the value to this data members. How to give using constructor. How to create constructor? See, right click and say source. Right click and say source, and you can see the option generate constructor using fields. Generate. That's it. The code will be ready for us. Now, whenever your class contains parameterized constructor, it is always suggested to create a default constructor. Suggestion only. Now this book class is ready. Coming to main method, we create object of book and we give the values 101, learn spring, and 800. So I'm creating object of book class to the constructor. We are passing these values to these arguments which are given to the data members. Now this object is ready with values. Now what we do? We'll just directly print that object in SOP. In system.out.println, directly we are printing the object here. So this piece of code is important here. Now see when we run, see the output what we are getting. When we print object, it's printing the class name. It's printing what? Class name, and at the rate some number. This number we call it as hash code. This number we call hash code, like an address concept. For every object there will be an address that we call hash code. But I cannot go to that address and access the data, not possible. Now, who is taking care of printing this output in this format? Who is taking care is toString method. Who's taking care here? toString method means whenever we print objects in SOP, which method will get invoked implicitly? toString. toString method will get invoked implicitly, which takes care of printing class name along with the hash code. But in our class, book class, do you have toString method? No. Then book class extends which class? Book class extends which class?
Object.
Very good. Object. Because in a class, if you are not extending, by implicitly it extends object. Since book class extends object, in object class we are having toString method. In object class we are having toString method. So toString method of object class will get invoked. And the role of toString method of object class is it returns the class name along with the hash code. So what's going to happen whenever we print objects in SOP, invokes toString method implicitly. So what are the points here? When an object is displayed in SOP, toString method is invoked implicitly. Then toString method belongs to object class. toString method of object class returns the class name along with the hash code. Now, so whatever the result it is printing, is it readable for us? Are we understanding this output? No. As a common user, we are unable to understand this output. So to go with a readable output, so in order to represent the object value in readable or string format, we need to override toString method in the class. We need to override what? toString method in the class. So if you don't want to go to base class methods, what is the solution? When you want to change the implementation of base class methods, we go with this overriding concept. So what we have to do, if I don't want to go to object class toString, we have to override the method here. Public string toString, where we return book ID, any format, book ID, the value of BID, /n to go to new line, then book name, the value of B name, then /n book price, the value of price. That's it. So just override toString method. Then whenever you print objects, it will go to toString method of your class and it's going to print the result in this format. Simple way to remember, whenever you are printing an object of a class, in SOP, in that class, you override toString method. That is a simple blind rule we follow. Clear this concept, all of you? So we'll be keep on learning about toString, so no worries. Then automatically we'll understand more on toString as the days goes on. Now, the next one, user-defined exceptions or custom exceptions. Custom means our own. We want to create our own exception. User-defined exceptions are created by creating a class. Which is a subclass of exception class. Just we have to create a class and make that as subclass of exception class. Like example, you can take a class myException. Simply say here extends exception. Now in this, we have to just create a constructor myException, which takes string message as argument, and we give that message to the superclass constructor. How to invoke superclass constructor using super of message. So what is this message? The message what you want to display for your exception. Then when a class contains parameters in constructor, it is always suggested to create a default constructor. That's it. Your user defined exception is ready to use. Now, let us understand this with the example code. Create a user defined exception, age exception. Create a class customer with a method setAge, which takes age as an argument. If the age is less than 18 or greater than 60, then it should throw age exception with the message age should be between 18 and 60. So our own exception in our own messages. That's the meaning of custom exception. Let us understand with the code. Custom exception demo. Right click on exceptions package and it's a new class, custom exception demo. Now create a user defined exception. How to create? Class page exception should be a subclass of exception. Then create a constructor which takes string message as argument, the message what you want to give for your exception, and give that message to the superclass. So is superclass here exception. So what is the message I'm giving? I'm giving to the superclass constructor. This superclass constructor will display the message back to us. Then a default constructor. That's it. Your user defined exception is ready to use. Now create a class customer with a method setAge which takes age as an argument. Now check here. If the given age is less than 18 or greater than 60, then we are going to throw. So whenever we want to throw an exception, we use a keyword throw. So throw keyword is used for what? To throw an exception. So throw, we have to throw object of age exception like this. Throw new age exception. And what is the message? Age should be between 18 and 60. So throw, we are throwing object of which class? This one. So we are invoking this constructor. This message will come and store into this message which we are giving to superclass constructor. Else will display the message your age, the value of age. Now if you observe, under throw keyword we are getting error because by using throw keyword, if you throw an exception, the syntax rule is for that method we have to specify throws the exception what you are throwing. It's a syntax rule. What is the syntax rule? if a method, in a method when we use throw keyword to throw an exception, for that method we have to specify throws the exception what you are throwing. It's a syntax rule. Now, coming to main method, create object of customer. Then using this object, call the method setIt and we'll pass 12. See, we are getting error because yesterday we discussed whenever we call a method, if the method is throwing some exception, see here, if the method is throwing exception here, then we have to call this method in between try and catch block, check it exception. We have to call the method in between try and catch block. That's it. Now see when we run, we are getting see age exception. Age should be between 18 and 60. Our own exception name, our own messages. Clear this concept all of you? Now, let us understand methods of throwable class. So throwable is what? It's the topmost class in exception hierarchy. It goes with the methods like string to string. Just now we discussed toString. So toString method actually belongs to object class and it is overridden in throwable class. What is the use of this? To represent the object value in string format. See here in the program, whenever we are printing object in SOP, here we are printing objects here. Now see, who is taking care of printing this output in this format? Who is taking care of printing output in this format? The exception name colon the message. Who is taking care here? toString method. toString method of throwable class is taking care of printing the output in this format. So whenever we print here, it's going to invoke what? Invokes toString method implicitly. The next method is string get message. I want to get only the message of your exception. Returns the message of exception. I want to just return only the message of exception. Then we call the method e.getMessage. Now see when we run, we get only the message of your exception. One more important method, this is important to developers, that is print start trace. Print start trace uses displays the root cause of exception. Root cause means where in which line number the exception has started, so that I can go to line number and rectify that. Complete details about your exception we can know by using print start trace method. So here complete details it's going to display the exception name, the message and the line numbers also. So where it has started, so that we can go to that line and rectify our code. Right? Any questions anyone up to here? Let me go with the assignment. Create a user defined exception, withdraw exception. Now create a class account with a method withdraw which takes amount and balance amount and balance as arguments. If the amount is greater than balance, then it should throw withdraw exception with a message insufficient balance. Right? So try to write this code. Simple. Same like previous one. And in tomorrow's class, we'll go with a new topic, multi-threading. Right? So any questions, anyone? Right. Yeah. Thank you all and see you tomorrow.